first, let's start with the team that is at the bottom of the NFC East, and I don't exactly see that changing anytime soon. The New York Giants, who dropped their game, that's generous, lost badly to the Seattle Seahawks by a final score of 24-3 the other night on Monday Night Football. Seattle's offense was kind of uneven all night. Geno Smith at one point got hurt, but the Giants' offense was simply abysmal. Daniel Jones, 27 of 34, good completion percentage, but just over 200 yards, 2 interceptions, including a bad pick six down in the red zone. QBR 22 and a passer rating of 67. He simply did not play well. So real quick on Seattle, because I think the main story here is the Giants. Listen, I like Seattle coming into this season. I feel like they'd be second in their division in the NFC West to the clearly superior Niners, but still go on to make the playoffs with a 10-7 record. They're 3-1 today. I feel really good about it. For the record, Seattle next week. I'm sorry, they got a bye week this week, and then the week after they got the Cincinnati Bengals with a beat up Joe Burrow. So you got to feel good right now if you're a member of the 12th man, because Seattle's is playing excellent football. To lose Geno Smith for the time being and Drew Lock to come in there make some plays, Seattle was able to run the football relatively effectively, averaging over 5 yards a carry, and the defense continues to play well. They're still kind of finding their footing, but that Devin Witherspoon, who I remember doing a draft show, or the Grid Network's first ever NFL draft show last April, which for the record was a blast with all the guys on the network, or a lot of the guys on the network. And I remember when Seattle took Devin Witherspoon with the 5th overall pick, and we're all kind of like, what? I mean, you got Christian Gonzalez, which, God bless Christian Gonzalez, out for the season with the shoulder injury. I hated to see that because I loved him out of Oregon. So prayers that the young man's able to heal up pretty fast and be ready for 2024. But I'm like, man, if you're going to take a corner, take Christian Gonzalez. But Devin Witherspoon, he's looked better and better week after week. It was kind of moved into a different spot in the lineup due to some injuries in Seattle's secondary, and played very well. So you give props to him, and Pete Carroll knows how to coach defense. There's no doubt about that. So hats off to the kid for making some big time plays, including the play of the night being the pick six. It felt like kind of put the game out of reach for the Giants because they could generate absolutely nothing on the offensive side of the ball. As for the Giants, again, to me, the bigger story in this game, the team that has scored a grand total in 2 home games of 3 points. And listen, I'm going to be, because we hear, listen, New York's a big market, a lot of media there. There's a lot of, if you're great, they love you. If you're bad, they hate you. It's kind of like New York, Boston, Philadelphia. Some of these bigger markets, even Los Angeles is like this. And Los Angeles, we think, is more of a laid back type of culture out west. But when the Lakers suck, the fans will let you know they suck. And if they're great, they're singing your praises. That's kind of how it is in some of those markets. I'm going to be the rare Daniel Jones critic who defends him today. In the same sense that I did back in week 1 when Dallas shellacked New York 40-0 on opening night on Sunday Night Football in the Meadowlands, and the Giants, again, obviously went scoreless, and Daniel Jones played poorly that particular evening. So I have, over the history of Carving Up Live, I actually started my show 2019, which was Daniel Jones' rookie year. I've always been skeptical of him. I've always been of the mindset that for the Giants to take him as high as they did in 2019 was ludicrous. If he hit his absolute peak, his absolute ceiling, he'd be a good quarterback, but nothing special. Nothing in the realm of, he's an elite player by any stretch of the imagination. Even last year when it was like Daniel Jones' breakout year. Well, yeah, it was only a breakout year because he stopped turning the ball over at a very alarming rate. By the way, he threw 4 picks last year. He already has 5 this season, so you can't expect that trend to really get in the right direction if you're a Giants fan or if you're Daniel Jones or the Giants coaching staff. But that's really what I want to hit on. Daniel Jones is limited. That goes without saying. I don't think the story of this game is, Daniel Jones sucked once again. That's 3 out of 4 games to start the season in which he played poorly. And if you want to date back to last season, the playoff game against Philly, he didn't play well in that one as well. To me, the story is Brian Daboll. And I love Brian Daboll. I think he rightfully won Coach of the Year a season ago. Last year, what he did for the New York Giants, helping them get to the playoffs, by the way. And this postseason doesn't, matter to voting for these regular season awards, of course, but led the Giants on the road at Minnesota. That's a loud environment to a playoff win. The defense was good. Daniel Jones played well. And obviously lose to Philadelphia the next week. But let's be honest, even though I actually picked the Giants to win that game, the Eagles were supposed to win. But there's something you could build off of if you're a Giants fan. You go out and get Darren Waller. You bring Saquon Barkley back. You bring Andrew Thomas back in a big deal. You go out and draft my man Jalen Hyatt, who they're not getting the ball to enough. But the fact of the matter is this. What do we know about great coaches? Opening drive, or opening quarter, just to start the football game in general. They have a good game plan. Maybe they start out hot. They put together a nice, solid opening drive, move the ball down the field, kind of a mix of run and passes. Maybe you throw a little reverse in there, a little trick play from time to time. And quite simply, the New York Giants have looked completely unprepared. They've been outcoached in every single game this season. I'd even say the Cardinals game, because the Cardinals are not as talented as the Giants. That game, with respect to the Cardinals, should not have come down to a 20-point comeback for the Giants and a walk-off field goal by Graham Gano. That should not have been the case. They've been outcoached in every game, and they've started awfully in every single game. Against Dallas, a scoreless first half, they were terrible. Multiple turnovers, pick six, a blocked field goal return for a touchdown for the Cowboys. Terrible. Week 2 against the Cardinals, they get shut out again in the first half. To their credit, they come back and win that game 31-28. The week after against the San Francisco 49ers, 6 points in the first half, and they ended up matching that in the second half with 6 more points for only 12 on that particular evening in Santa Clara. And then last night, once again, a single field goal. The New York Giants simply this season have been awful in the first half and dug themselves too big of a hole to come back in the second half, because we know even those who like Daniel Jones, thinks he can maybe be a franchise quarterback for the New York Giants, those who may have, I think, wrongly defended the Giants giving him the contract that they gave him, would all acknowledge, if you're in a spot where you're down double digits on a primetime game, of which Daniel Jones, by the way, has been horrible, probably the worst, check the numbers, folks, the worst primetime quarterback we've ever seen. We get on Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has had a couple decent primetime games. Name the Daniel Jones primetime moment. It doesn't exist, simply put. So, if you're constantly down double digits, if you're trying to come back constantly, you're not, forget just playing to Daniel Jones' strengths, you're simply not being honest and putting your quarterback in a position to be successful. You're not being honest about what he is. Again, of course the Giants made it a big mistake, giving a 4-year, $160 million contract. In no universe is he a $40 million a year player. No universe. But, again, I'm the Daniel Jones critic who's defending Daniel Jones today. He was sacked 11 times on Monday Night Football. By the way, avoided a lot more. We've always said, like, Daniel Jones' biggest strength is probably his mobility. He avoided multiple. He could have been sacked 13, 14 times the other night. He was sacked 11 times by Seattle. He had no Saquon Barkley. Again, if you're criticizing, oh, why can't Daniel Jones lift the team? Because that's not who he is. So at least be honest with what you have. Get Jalen Hyatt the ball more. Run the ball effective. They can't do that. And Brian Daboll, you see him on the sideline with Daniel Jones, where Daniel threw, again, the awful pick six. Again, what's funny about that game is that Seattle's up 14-3. They seem like they had the momentum, and the Giants come out in the second half, puts together a good drive, get in the red zone, and then Daniel Jones makes the horrible decision to force the ball to the left side. Devin Witherspoon takes it to the house, and that's pretty much all she wrote for that football game. But he goes to the sidelines, and you see him and Brian Daboll. They're kind of having a conversation back and forth, and Daboll's got the Microsoft tablet. He didn't break it, although he tried to pull a Tom Brady and break the tablet. But he's showing Daniel Jones what's going on there, and then he just kind of tosses the tablet, not at Daniel Jones, but in the direction of Daniel Jones in a very frustrating manner. Bro, this ain't all on Daniel. This is on you too, coach. And I like Brian Daboll. I think I don't think this is debatable. He's been the best coach the Giants have had since Coughlin retired. And I think he's a brilliant offensive mind, and we've seen the success Josh Allen had with him in the past, and it really hurt Josh Allen last year to not have Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator. That said, the Giants, week after week after week, look unprepared. They're committing penalties. They're turning the football over. They can't protect Daniel Jones. The Giants have proved themselves to have maybe the worst offensive line in New York, which would therefore mean the worst in football, because the Jets obviously have an abysmal line, as we lamented about all offseason. Do I think Daniel Jones is elite? Do I think he'll ever be elite? No and no. At least acknowledge that if you're the New York Giants franchise and if you are Brian Daboll. I like Daboll. I actually like aspects of the Giants roster. But play into what your quarterback is good at. If you're limited, play into that. By the way, I give, like the Dallas Cowboys. Remember last year, and the Dak Prescott went down, and they went 4-1 with Cooper Rush, and the whole media's freaking out, like, oh, is there a quarterback competition in Dallas, which was silly. But part of the reason that was even suggested was not just that Dallas was winning games. It was that the Cowboys coaching staff, and I'm not a Kellen Moore guy, but you give props to Kellen Moore and to Mike McCarthy. They said, you know what? Cooper Rush can't make the throws Dak can make. Cooper Rush can't push the ball down the field. What we're going to do, and Dallas has a better roster than the Giants in fairness, but we're going to rely on Zeke and Tony Pollard. We're going to ask him, we're going to put him in situations where it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. Maybe he hits a check down. Maybe he's got to make that one big throw in the game, which Cooper Rush made from time to time to a CeeDee Lamb, to a Dalton Schultz, somebody like that. Keep him out of harm's way. You make him a game manager because that's what he is, because he's a backup. I think obviously Daniel Jones is better than Cooper Rush. I don't think Daniel's a backup. I don't think he's top 20, so he certainly could be flirting with that backup sort of role. But I can't be too hard on a player that we know is limited if his coaching staff is screwing him over. Because that's what they are. The Giants have the weapons. They've got Jalen Hyatt. They've got Darren Waller. Okay, even with no Saquon Barkley, who we hope, knock on wood, should be back pretty soon for the Giants. But it's not a situation where, again, we know he's limited. Again, by the way, it's not Daniel Jones' fault the Giants gave him the contract they gave him. I mean, I'm sure Daniel Jones was thrilled about that, but they didn't sign it. Daniel Jones didn't sign himself to that deal. Daniel Jones didn't draft himself 6th overall back in 2019. It's mismanagement by the Giants organization, and in particular now, the coaching staff. They look unprepared, undisciplined, and completely outcoached week in and week out, and that simply cannot happen if you're aspiring to make the playoffs. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.